Perfect. All right, we'll let everybody come in as they come in. And we are live now on YouTube. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Shahiwa Jarrett Gellin, and on behalf of the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce, we are so happy to have you here with us tonight. So as people come on, please just go ahead and mute yourself. Tonight is special as a part of our Business and Politics series. We're featuring local, state, and federal elected so that we understand, we make sure to understand how politics on all of these levels impacts our businesses. And so we are very pleased to have our guests here today, Senator Chevron Jones, as well as Senator Gary Farmer. But before I jump into our guests and read their bios and get started with the legislative wrap, I did want to thank my partners on this event. I have a board member, but also a partner on this event, Mr. Brian C. Johnson from the Minority Builders Coalition. Go ahead and say a few words.
Just real quickly, thank you all again to two of my favorite senators, including my own senator, Senator Jones, for lending your expertise and passion to the perspectives of entrepreneurs who need to understand better how their business operates in the context, especially against the backdrop of politics. And thank you, Madam President, for taking the lead on pulling us and pulling them together.
Oh, thank you. Let me make sure everybody's mute. Thank you, Brian, for being a partner and always making sure that you are in the community and partnering in our coalition. I also wanted to introduce the Lauderhill Chamber president, who is unfortunately unable to attend tonight. They kind of have a funding emergency tonight that just came up. So trust me, I totally get it when you're running an organization and you have a funding emergency. That comes first. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. And first I'm going to introduce Senator Gary Farmer, who was born in Fort Lauderdale and received his BS degree in history from Florida State University in 1986. Go Knowles, if I do pause on that a little bit, and went on to receive his JD degree from the University of Toledo, Toledo College of Law in 1991. I'm going to ask you all to mute as you come on, please. Farmer has spent almost his entire career fighting for the rights of consumers, fair and just compensation for victims, and the protection of the civil justice system and full access to courts. For over the past decade, Mr. Farmer has been on the forefront of high-profile consumer litigation in Florida and across the country. Gary Farmer was elected to serve as a Florida Senator for District 34, representing Eastern Broward County in 2016, and has served as a Democratic leader for the 2021 legislative session. Thank you for your service and your leadership, Senator Farmer. Now, we also have with us Senator Jones, a young, energetic brother we have with us tonight. A Florida native, born and raised in Miami Gardens. I have all people from Miami Gardens always go back and say Carroll City.
Carroll City, that's right.
Carroll City. Let me put that. Senator Jones has called West Park home for nearly 2 decades. After teaching AP chemistry in Broward County Public Schools, he served as the executive director of South Florida Reading Corps. He also founded the South Florida Youth Summit, the largest gathering of young people in South Florida, and Lead Nation, one of South Florida's top organizations for leadership training. Before being elected to the state Senate, he served in the Florida House from 2013 to 2018 and has loved advocating and securing funding for youth mentoring, championing legislation that increases transparency between the public and law enforcement, and consistently fighting for change. And I think I'm going to end with that on the bios because this has been a really challenging session. And so I thought it was extremely important for us to have this session this year at the chamber, as we were kind of forced to kind of pivot and pay attention to what was going on in Tallahassee. So I'm going to start off with you, Senator Farmer, to kind of give us a wrap and a summary of what happened in this session on some of the important issues that you saw this session.
Sure, thank you. And Senator Jones and I have done some of these together. We did a town hall together in Hollywood, Hollandale, and I wish I had better news to report on this past legislative session. I came up with a format, and I've done it the last couple of years: the good, the bad, and the ugly. And unfortunately, the good is very little, and the bad and the ugly is a long list. It's just, and I'll start by saying, I think we were really impacted in a negative way by the COVID pandemic, and in the sense that we had no public participation in the Capitol this past year, and it really created a vacuum. Normally when controversial pieces of legislation are put forward, groups come up to Tallahassee en masse, and they walk the halls, and they educate us, and they give us real life stories on why a piece of legislation is not a good piece of legislation. And that was just totally absent this year. And we would sit in committees and look out at an empty room, and so you wouldn't have, educated interest groups or constituents or people, again, who, are subject matter experts. Senator Jones and I, like all legislators, we know things about what we do and what our careers are and things of that nature, but we're not subject matter experts on everything. And we really rely on the public and groups and interest groups and even, yes, lobbyists to educate us. And that was all missing this past year. And it really had a chilling effect. And I think it really created a fertile environment for Governor DeSantis and others to come forward with a really harsh, harmful, and really in many instances hateful slew of legislation. And happy, and I don't want to steal all the topics and from Senator Jones, and we can dive into these as we go forward. But I mean, whether it was corporate interests over public health, which things like doing away with any COVID vaccine passport, the COVID liability bill, it just unnecessary. Lawyers aren't doing COVID cases, but to apply it to nursing homes and healthcare facilities. Nursing homes, my gosh, it's our grandparents, and we put them there for one reason only, and they're being paid to do one thing, and that's to take care of the residents. And the residents can't go anywhere, and they have no control of their environment. So doing that, I don't think was good. There was a tobacco bill that was billed as Tobacco 21. It was a trick. I mean, tobacco, there's already federal legislation about having to be 21 to buy. What it really did was deregulate the vaping industry. And then you could go on and on. Assault on the democratic process, social media deplatforming, of course, HB1, which I think has been very much on our minds this past few days as we support our Cuban brothers and sisters, but can't help but point out the irony of a bill that was pushed by the Republican Party that really was not necessary. We already had laws on the books to deal with mobs and violent conduct, but it really had a chilling, and we believe could have a chilling effect going forward on speech and peaceable assembly. School vouchers, guns in schools now, in any school that's affiliated with a church now, they can't stop people from bringing guns into schools. And of course, SB 90, voter suppression, that which again is in the news now. They're trying to do a similar type bill in Texas, and our Texas brothers and sisters and the Democrats in the Senate there are really taking a courageous stand trying to stop that legislation. And it's very harmful legislation that's going to limit people's ability to safely exercise maybe their most important constitutional right, the right to vote. When we had no problem, Governor himself said it was the most transparent, efficient election we've ever had. And then they come with this draconian bill. Those are just some of the highlights, or I guess I should say lowlights, to me. And then in the face of all those bad bills, we did nothing meaningful for the unemployment system that is just totally broken in the state of Florida and provides woefully inadequate compensation for people who lose their jobs. So we did a bunch of bad things. We didn't really address good things that needed to be addressed. I'm happy to talk in more detail about it, but I'm gonna shut up now and let my colleague Senator Jones get some of his thoughts in.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Senator Farmer. Senator Jones, if you want to go ahead and take this moment to kind of, before we get into some details, kind of give us an overview of the highlights or lowlights as Senator Farmer spoke to it, and give us your take on this last legislative session.
Thank you so much, Shahiwa. Or should I say, Madam President? That's what I need to be respectful in that. But to a shout out real quick to my good friend Commissioner. He will always be Commissioner Brian Johnson, who works hard not only in the community but throughout the state of Florida. And it's not by accident that I know that he's on here, because I know when legislation is coming across in Tallahassee, when I see that name pop up in my phone, I know that there's an issue that Brian needs to talk to me about. And a huge, and I can't go on without giving a thank you to Vernon Doolin, who I see on there. I'll tell you a story about Mr. Vernon later, but listen, our Boys and Girl Club days, that was our dude. So it's good to see you, Brother Vernon. You know, at times in this legislative session, there were more challenges than solutions that were created. Governor DeSantis and the Republicans there, they prioritized making it harder for the people to have their voices heard, both during the legislative work and for years to come. There was a lot of different types of initiatives that were passed by the legislature, including those that criminalized peaceful protests. Senator Farmer, who is a good friend of mine, made a clear distinction of what we're dealing with right now here within South Florida. The usurping of local control, the emboldening of vigilante violence, making it harder to cast our ballots in the future elections, making it harder for people to propose amendments to the state constitution, and eliminating the ability for transgender women and girls to participate in sports that match their gender identity. All these different things are issues that we dealt with in this legislative session. The House even passed a measure to limit access to abortion care that was not even considered in the Senate in a Senate committee, but they pushed it through by another means, and they did this with a theme that I call the "because they could" type of legislative session. And it's true that right now, that if you all see that we did all of this during the same time we were dealing with a global pandemic, and the Floridians are hurting bad. That goes from families, that goes from small businesses, and even corporations, because this global pandemic, it exacerbated existing problems. You mean, just like the state's unemployment system, and you mean the abysmally low benefits, the lack of access to affordable health care, because we know that the Medicaid role has grown since the time of COVID. The affordable housing issue, we know that the eviction moratorium that when it's lifted, we will see a great deal of people being out on the street. So things that our state government can and should address for the betterment of people's lives, we did not. Instead, my colleagues, they chose to ignore the plight of everyday people and instead push a litany of oppressive and bad bills to hurt Floridians. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation today, because I think that when we start making people more financially educated, that not only saves communities, that make for healthy communities, they make for healthy people. And so I'm looking forward to us not just talking, but moving from what we talk here today and moving that into some action, because I believe that the chamber is the incubator where things can develop and can grow into policy.
And Senator Jones, I agree with you, and that's why we're doing this, to show that we need to engage the process. And specifically, I want to ask about two bills that you heard from me, and I'm sure a bunch of others this session, because it really, quite frankly, scared us. Because at the end of the day, HB 53 and SB 1076 attempted to take, any type of preference that we as a chamber and minority builders and other such associations have fought for, so that there is equity in the process when it comes to procurement and utilization of Black businesses. So I wanted to talk specifically about those two bills, SB 1076 and HB 53, and so that our small businesses understand how what is happening in Tallahassee can impact them locally. I think there's this disconnect and this misconception that they're far away in, Tallahassee. What they're doing doesn't affect, but it does. So if you want to explain it, I can a little bit, because in essence, the two bills sought to get rid of any type of preference, local preference, small business preference, any type of preference in the category of what they did in spending state funds or local dollars with regard to quote unquote public works projects. And this would have eliminated large spending on that's going on with our transportation surtax. There's a huge kind of set aside, if you will, a percentage that goes to small businesses for the county's SBE and CBE programs. And I can go on and on with regard to the school board, the impact of our school board, et cetera. So I want you guys to speak on that, on the impact of this bill and other bills that you've seen that can really impact our small businesses locally, although all the action is happening in Tallahassee.
Can I do this? Because Senator Farmer took Senator Broder to task on this bill on 1076 on the public works. So I'm going to let Senator Farmer take it.
Thank you. Sometimes I get a little fired up, a little excited when we're in session. But no, Shiwa, I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because we do need our local communities to understand the importance of being active in Tallahassee. And again, now this past year was very different because of COVID and us being shut down. But that legislation was it's a classic piece of legislation in that it was worded and advertised in a way that was just gonna give local governments more freedom and more control, yet they're preempting local governments with everything else. And here we have incentives that exist so that our communities can ensure that minority-owned businesses of color are getting their fair shot and getting at least, some of the pie, because, so many of these community development projects exist in neighborhoods that are in need of help. And so it was very offensive to me that we would be doing something that would take away incentives and programs that have been, this was, Senator Jones hit the nail on the head in talking about this was a session of they did it because they could. And we both use that phrase, I think, a lot. The other phrase I've been using too is so many bills were solutions in search of a problem. These local programs and these state-run programs where we give these incentives and make sure that we have a fair and diverse representation in the businesses that are getting these government dollars have been working so well. And they've been enabling minority-owned businesses to be competitive and get the chance to prove themselves. And so there was really no justification or equitable reason why we would be taking that away. And it is a good example how a little piece of legislation that doesn't get a lot of attention from the press because all these other things are going on, dealing with voting rights and education, and you go on and on and on. And yet a bill like this kind of sneaks through the process. And it's why groups like yours need to be engaged and educate legislators about the bad effects that a piece of legislation like 1076 would have. And so it was unfortunate that we went down that road. And that bill also changed a bit through the committee process, and they sold it as a not so intrusive piece of legislation, and then some language gets popped in. I don't remember if it was an amendment or it was a House bill that came over, and I think it was a House bill which had worse language, right, Chev?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that too really bothers me, and I know it bothers Senator Jones. You know, we're the Senate. We're supposed to be doing our own work, and if we see a product come over from the other chamber, and we have great respect for the members of the House of Representatives, but you know, we're supposed to be the saucer that cools the hot tea, and we're supposed to be the more moderate, deliberative, contemplative body. And I don't think we did that much this past session, and did push back when we get language that makes a bad bill even worse. And that's what happened with 1076 as well. So it was very unfortunate, and I wish we could have done more to at least mollify it, if not stop it.
I wanted
You know
to
what,
give
Shahira, to add-
Brian a chance to
Oh,
say
sorry, go
something
ahead,
because
go
we.
ahead.
Oh,
Take it.
sorry. Because
No. I was just going to add to what Senator Farmer just briefly,
Mhm.
and to say that, I mean, even the a lot of the counties and the municipalities, they were against this also, because several of the counties and municipalities have
Right.
adopted local preference ordinances for procurement under the current 50% or more state appropriated funding threshold for public works projects. I just wanted to add that part.
Yep.
You're exactly correct, because I remember sending an email to the county like, you have a lot of preference programs. What you gonna do about this?
What you gonna do about this?
What's your response? Go ahead, Brian. I know we had some conversations.
Actually, no, this is actually, I believe this bill alone can be the crux of this conversation, because in this discussion, there are lessons to our constituents who are entrepreneurs, who are people who work for them, who are communities who benefit from them, about politics that we must understand and adapt to. And we often say, and there's an African proverb that says, until the lion learns to speak, all of the stories will favor the hunter. And what happens in at least statewide politics, those people who have the on-campus lobbyists, those people who have the ongoing physical presence, have a louder megaphone than we do, sitting behind our desk and sitting in our offices. And so I remember about a year and a half ago, I was sitting in a meeting, and Senator Farmer sort of gave a prelude to this session by saying that there is a level of arrogance that the Republican side, and I know it's a nonpartisan event, but let's just call it what it is. The majority side, let's call it that. There's a level of arrogance that the majority side has because of their numerical advantage, which unfortunately did not get mitigated in the 2020 election. So they came into 2021 even more arrogant. And yet our folk have to understand that it's not just the lawmakers who take advantage of that. There are people who have agendas that hurt us. It helps them, but hurt us, who also sought to take advantage of that. And thus is the case with 1076. We know there are associations, because we fight them here locally, who wanted to do two things, and they tried both of them last session. One, do away with anything that's race and gender conscious, and anything that gives a preference to local businesses. We know there are folk who want to see all of that go away. We fight them here. And the fact is they lose here. And so they go to Tallahassee, where they have influence, and try to make it happen from state down. And thank God we have representation like the two great senators here. And I want to also give a shout out to Senator Thurston, who also assisted, because people have to understand, if not for folk like these two gentlemen and Senator Thurston, and I'm going to give a shout out, having community connections, we will always be at a competitive disadvantage in trying to overcome people who have lobbyists who are going door to door, counting their votes, while we're sitting here sending emails and making phone calls that may or may not get heard in time. And so 1076 was one of those lessons where we got a voice through our representation, and that representation helped us. There's another point to be made, that they won't stop trying to bend the laws in their privileged favor. Again, we as local advocates have to tell you all, as our constituents, we need you to get certified. We need you to get your stuff together so that if we are successful in our advocacy and getting a yes, that means we go out and we ask the municipalities, we ask the school board, we ask the water districts, we ask the hospital districts, we ask the education systems, create opportunities for small and minority and women-owned firms to do more business with you because they're not. And eventually they say yes. And so we are, Senator Farmer, Senator Jones, spending year-round having these workshops, how to get certified, having these workshops, how to increase your capacity, how to bid, so that we can prepare our people to take advantage of the opportunities that these programs are creating. All of that would have been sabotaged because of some selfish agendas by people who are had lobbyists pushing some of these bills. And so our people have to understand the importance of politics and the fact that you have a Black Chamber of Commerce with partners like Minority Builders or Lauderhill Chamber who are providing subject matter expertise to our very powerful, very active representation in the form of Senator Jones, Senator Farmer, again, and Senator Thurston. And you all as business people have to understand that, because I'm gonna say this last thing. At some point, Senator Jones, Senator Farmer, Senator Thurston gonna need y'all, because they can't do what they do without knowing for sure that we have their backs. And so we have to be prepared to come to their rescue as their fight for us.
I thank you for that, Brian. I was going to segue. He's clapping. I was going to segue into, a question for the senators to understand how receptive or interactive you are with the community, and to let people understand just how receptive you are. You're getting emails, calls, and if people come and sit down and visit with you, I often have these conversations with small business owners about visiting their representatives, talking to them, allowing them to understand their issues and concerns, because just as Senator Farmer said earlier, you're not subject matter experts on everything. So you need that input. So I just want you to speak briefly about that before we just talk about the upcoming sessions and anything you see coming up on the horizon. But speak to that need for engagement and your receptiveness to that engagement.
Can I just ask Senator Farmer one question?
I'll briefly say this, that the old saying that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu, is true. And it's true. And even if you don't show up to the table, you're still on the menu, and you not being able to voice your concerns and your problems, that is. Everyone doesn't have the access to have to send a text message when they see a bad bill that Brian might send, or will you even use Shahiwa or anybody else, to myself or Senator Farmer. Some people have to depend on sending the emails because they feel that that's the only way that you do. I think most people want to know that they have access to their state senator or their state representative. The importance of coming to Tallahassee and sitting down with your legislators, more specifically, since we're talking to the Black Chamber, I would love to see more of our community in Tallahassee, because a lot of the issues, and Senator Farmer knows, a lot of the issues that we deal with, and he's an ally. Senator Farmer is fighting on the front lines with us for the Black community for a lot of the things that we deal with, whether it's the small businesses, whether it's our youth that's out on the streets. Now, granted, last year we didn't have visitors because the Senate was locked down. It was a free fall over in the House, but for the Senate, it was locked down. But this year it's open. Session starts on January the 11th. The first committee week is September 20th. And we'll meet in September, we'll meet in October, and we'll meet in November. We're not meeting in December. Then my suggestion is that make it a road trip. Take your family, come up there and come to a committee, and come sit down in the committee. Come meet with me. Come meet with Senator Farmer. And if we have time, let us take you to a committee chair to sit down and talk about a bill that might be of concern to you. I'm happy to engage the community. I just think it's important, and I'm looking forward to this year and people being more engaged, which I think they are. But people got a lot of stuff built up inside them last year.
2 years worth. They got 2 years worth. Well, and let me expound on that if I could real quick. I couldn't agree more that I say it all the time, democracy thrives on participation. So having people up there, educating us, giving us real life example. Most of the bills we see, not only are they different subject matters that we may not be experts on, but in many ways, it's just words on paper. But then when real life people come into our office and give us stories or examples of how maybe this program that we're talking about that they wanted to get rid of helped so many small businesses, you know, now it makes it more real. It's not just words on paper. And I would encourage you all, even before Tallahassee, you know, you got opportunities right now, throughout the summer into early fall. Everybody, you have members who are in church groups or kids on soccer teams or in the same school or whatever with other elected officials. And that's a great opportunity to get to know people before, as they say, you know, everything's getting crazy and the bullets are flying during a live session. You know, get to know your legislators in the off season. Get to try to know them right now, you know, and then when you go to Tallahassee, you're a familiar face, you know, and I know she, what, you know, her daughter and my daughter dance together, or, you know, whatever it is. That's really helpful too, because it's a lot harder for people to hurt people that they know. And like I said, and that works together with the whole issue of making an issue real and not just words on paper. Chev, we left him speechless. Oh my.
He was on mute. Take yourself on mute, Madam President.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, but that's why we're doing this. It's, you know, a part of our outreach and making sure the chamber is engaging you all. And we have a couple of days planned for you all next year. So you may see a whole group of us up there next session. Not May, you will see a whole group of us up there next session. I think I had my fill of Tallahassee in my 4 years of Florida State, but I guess I got to come back. That's got to come back. But I know that Donette had a question, and then I want to go into the next session, what you all see, I think is coming up on the horizon for this upcoming session, because I don't really see it slowing down or it being any less controversial. So go ahead, Donette, with your question really quickly.
Actually, it's not even a serious question. It's Senator Farmer is, whatever he's eating is making me hungry. He's licking his fingers. He's just enjoying it so much. I want to get him to stop.
You are so bad. You are so bad. You're so bad. You're so bad.
I wish I could.
Yeah, I know, if we were in the same space, right? This virtual space is very different. But I want to get your sense of what important topics you're hearing now that are on the horizon for the next session. What are your expectations for the next session? If you can share that with us as well.
Listen, here's what my top priority is going to be. And I'm going to sing it to the top of my lungs, and I'm sure Brian Johnson and I'm sure Gary Farmer will agree with me. Redistricting is on the horizon. That is the main thing that I am pushing, and everyone needs to get ready for that, because I will tell you now, I'm not playing. My colleagues are going to play with these maps. Hear me what I'm telling you. And we need to be prepared for redistricting. That's what's coming on my end. I'm Senator Farmer. I'm sure
it's the first, second, and third most important issue we're going to deal with this coming legislative session. Listen, we're kind of unique in Florida in that we have language in our Constitution. We passed the Fair Districts Constitutional Amendment almost 10 years ago. And that's what led to the 2012 maps that were drawn ended up getting thrown out in court. And I'm sure everybody understands, but, you know, every 10 years, you know, we do the census, and then off the census, we do redistricting. And we're going to pick up a congressional seat, maybe two. It looks like maybe just one. But more importantly, at the state level, we draw new maps at that time. And those 2012 maps got thrown out because they violated fair districts, the constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, that was a different Supreme Court. And now we got a Supreme Court full of Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott appointees. And so we're not going to get the same fair shake this time around that we got last time. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us to fight like hell to make sure that they don't gerrymander and try to cut our numbers down even more. Because like on issues of 1076, that was a pure party line vote in the Senate. 24-16, that bill went down. And it's really unfortunate. It used to be not even 10, 15 years ago, we had a much more moderate group of Republicans in the Senate. Not even so much, I think we have moderate Republicans in the Senate. Problem is, they're not independent. And they, we call it the houseification of the Senate. And these folks feel like they got to vote the way they're told to vote by leadership. And it's not supposed to be like that in the Senate. And it wasn't like that forever. And that's another phenomenon we're dealing with right now. And so, but I couldn't agree with Senator Jones more. Redistricting is by far the biggest issue we're going to have to deal with.
I also think that we'll probably, Senator Farmer, I think we also will probably deal with the Surfside issue. We'll probably deal with some how we look at some of the requirements for HOAs and to building codes. I think we're also going to deal with the critical race theory issue. My colleagues will deal with some civics issues. Will come to the table. Those are things that I think I can guarantee you we're going to talk about this year.
And I said early on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The stuff on our list that is the good is really bills that we were able to stop this past session.
Right.
And some of those were a very bad union busting bill, a bill that would have ensured the ultimate demise of the Florida retirement system. We have the best pension fund in the country, one of the best pension funds in the world right here in Florida. And whether you're a bus driver, a teacher, a policeman, a fireman, firewoman, a policewoman, whatever, we made a promise, we made a deal. People came and worked for the government, and they could have made more money if they'd gone into the private sector, but they came and worked for the state or for a local government. And in exchange for that, they got the security and the peace of mind of knowing that they were going to have this incredible retirement system there backing them up, and that they could count on when they decided to hang them up. And we came this close to losing that thing. And then of course, you remember the Bright Futures bill, and we ended up getting rid of the worst part about that, but they still took away the guaranteed funding for that. So I anticipate that there's going to be some problems with not as many kids getting scholarships. And Bright Futures has been such an incredible success. Kids work so hard, parents work so hard to get that scholarship money, and to try to take it away or limit it, it's just horrific and wrong. And there's more bad issues coming other than redistricting for sure.
Right. And I know with all that happened with coronavirus surrounding, the forced closures, et cetera, and the impact to small businesses, that we have this American Rescue Plan money that the state has. They got a lot of money. Do you all have any say in how that's spent at all? Not at all. Yeah, I saw an article with the priorities and et cetera, what they're, kind of the governor laid out or what have you. And
well, and listen, what that money did was at least stop or delay the further pillaging of so many social programs, because that's what always gets cut. And in this state, and I'm sorry, and Brian was being very respectful, saying, let's not call it, but let's call it what it is. And it's the Republicans that are doing this. It's not the Democrats. And they keep wanting to lower taxes. We already have a very limited revenue stream in this state. We don't have a state income tax. We're dependent upon tourism. Tourism took a huge hit. The American CARES Act, plugged the gap thank you, Joe Biden, for saving our butts. But, you know, when that money starts, and and it was just so frustrating, because then on top of all that, then when the budget went forward, all the Democrat stuff got vetoed by the governor at the end of the day. So, and some Democrats
Right.
tend to maybe swap a vote here and there for a budget item, and it's a nice little trick they can play when the Senate president can say, "Oh yeah, give me this vote, and I'll put your thing in the budget," knowing full well that the governor is just going to veto it on the back end. So,
Wow. Politics, I tell you, politics.
yeah,
I know that
or
we,
politrick.
right.
Great.
I heard that term too. I
To
know
quote
that.
somebody, don't often quote Senator Jones.
I know that Brian had a comment or a question, and then we're gonna look to wrap. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, just as a matter of process, I think one of the underappreciated parts of what you all do is the process of how an idea ends up becoming a bill to be voted on, that ends up becoming a legislation or a budget item to be either accepted or vetoed by the governor. And so as a idea, no matter what its source is, nor its intent is, comes forth, bills ends up in certain committees. And one part of how we have to get better at advocacy is identifying first who are in those committees, who are the people in those committees, and then secondly, making friends amongst those who are not the ones we're familiar with. Because as you all have heard often, there's a numerical advantage by one party over another. And that's not a close advantage, it's a huge advantage. And you see that numerical mismatch in terms of who's represented on these committees. And so my question to you all is, where or how would you recommend we go about identifying, and I know Senator Farmer said that there are some who are moderate but not independent, but how do we start engaging those who think differently normally, who are on the other side of the aisle at these early stages, such that they also will understand the ramifications of their decisions? So we know you all, because you're of us, you're from us, you identify with what we identify with, are going to understand our sensibilities. But how do we reach out to others across the aisle to get them to better appreciate the true consequences before it gets to the floor?
I guess I'll take it first, and then let Senator Jones jump in. I think, listen, you know, in Broward County, as you said, Brian, you know, you're preaching to the converted here. You know, we're with you guys. You had us at hello on these issues, you know, but you have sister organizations throughout the state. And it goes back, I think, to the personal one-on-one type of advocacy that Senator Jones brought up and that I was talking about. And reach out, and, you know, because there are Republican senators out there, and I hesitate to name them, but we don't want them to get blackballed, you know, on the other side. But there are, I mean.
Text me the names.
Yeah, Senator Bradley, Senator Rodriguez, Senator, you know, there are several of them, and there are areas that are purple areas, you know, so every vote matters. And so that's where, if you've got, you know, Black Chamber of Commerce in other districts, you know, we can help guide you, and we can get more specific, maybe offline when it's not, you know, a broadcast forum, because one, I always like to keep it real. Fear is the biggest motivator when it comes to politics and being a legislator. And the main fear is not getting reelected or not getting elected. And so showing that there's numbers on your side gets people to think more. And then you get into the substance of it and how you justify it, you know, substantively. And that's where I think you can start making progress. And nowadays, it won't manifest itself as much in an open vote. You know, it's what's the old joke, you know, Democrats are like mopeds, you know, fun to ride around on, but you don't want to see it happening, you know, I mean, ride around with, you know, I mean, you know, Republicans don't want to vote in public. Oftentimes they're not allowed to vote with us, but you educate them behind the scenes, and then they go to leadership before a bill is filed as it's going through the process and say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with this or that aspect of it. And then hopefully we change it through that committee process, because they always got to have the Republican offer the amendment or offer. We come up with great ideas, they take them and they pass them under their flag and not ours. But behind the scenes is, I think, and I'll let Senator Jones chime in on this because he's very, very effective at this in Tallahassee, educating and behind the scenes work and getting them to either back off or fix things.
No, Senator Farmer, you said it all. And I will say this, Brian, and it's just that a lot of these things, some of them, they won't let good bills of ours. Gary said it. They won't let us carry the good bills. So either one or two things have to happen. Either we have to amend our bill onto other people's bill, which I'm fine with. I'm under the impression now that as long as what I believe in gets the opportunity to get into and becomes law, I'm cool with it. But it's also finding who our allies are. Some of the names are already called out. There are some people who we can probably win over sometimes. Some like a Jeff Brandes. We can get Jeff from time to time. And there's a few others like a Tom Wright, who he will vote with things that make sense. Specifically, if he know that it's an issue that's about to affect home rule, Tom Wright is he's an outright no on that. Or what's the other gentleman name from Orlando area? I think he's from Ocala. It's one more, but there's another one that if it doesn't make sense, and it's the old school Republicans. They believe that, listen, if it's going to hurt people or if it's going to marginalize people, some of them will say, no, I'm not voting for it. So we have quite a few of them in there. Now, I'll tell you this, some of those people are terming out. And some of these new folk who about to come over from the House, I serve with them. And so it's about to get real extreme in the next 2 to 4 years.
Yep.
Wow. That I certainly don't like to hear that. But
we're full of good news, aren't we? Sure you are.
I see. Well, look, now you see why I stayed away from Tallahassee. But when all this HB 53 and SB 1076, and I'm gonna go back and watch that video, Gary. I was watching the Florida channel like at 11 p.m. trying to keep up with you all and watch what was going on, because it was just so much happening. To see that video where you took them to task on that, because it was that would have been very harmful. But I will say this, as a chamber, we understand that we have to be engaged. And I think we've been very engaged at the city and county level, and we're turning to the state because we understand that there's some important things that are being done, and it's impactful to our businesses here in the state, even more so because of COVID and because of the struggle. And we don't want any opportunities to be closed. And that, in essence, was what could have happened this session. And so that's just a part of us, engaging and educating our members so they understand that this is important. We know that they have a lot on their mind, they're running businesses, but this is important too. So we have engaged with other chambers throughout the state, started another organization to bring together some groups, and we will be in Tallahassee engaging not only you, but others, because we know you need the help. And we know we have to talk to others so that they can see and understand our issues and concerns, and hopefully vote with you all. You get some additional support. So we will continue to reach out and engage with you all. So I thank you both for being here with us this evening. And we'll continue to do this and see you in person soon. Bring our advocacy committee to meet and sit with you both. So thank you for doing this. I thank you, Senator Farmer and Senator Jones, for being here. I want to thank all my partners in crime, but not really crime. Brian C. Johnson of Minority Builders Coalition. Thank you, Vernon, for always pushing out the information and showing up. for NBC as well. And thank you to our partner as well, Lauderhill Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to everyone joining us here tonight and live on YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you. See y'all.
Everybody have a great evening.
You all,
Have a good
thank you
night.
so much, gentlemen.
All right.